Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really cool chapter from Adam Grant's Think Again. We're going to explore the whole psychology of confidence and why, weirdly enough, sometimes knowing just a little bit makes us feel like we know it all.
This quote, which people often link to Charles Darwin, really sets the stage. It points to this strange little quirk in our brains that we're talking about today. The less we actually know, the more certain we often feel.
Okay, so to get our heads around this, let's start with a medical mystery from way back in the late 1800s. There was a seamstress, Ursula Mertz, who checked into a clinic because of headaches. But then, things got really strange. She started walking right into her bed frame and couldn't even find the door to her own room.
Her doctor, Gabriel Anton, pretty quickly figured out the shocking truth. Ursula was blind. But here's the wild part. When he asked her about it, she swore up and down she could see just fine. This led to the discovery of what's now called Anton syndrome, a condition where a person is, quite literally, blind to their own blindness.
Now, Ursula's story is obviously an extreme case, but it's a perfect illustration of something we all deal with. While we might not have that kind of brain damage, we all have these cognitive blind spots, and they stop us from seeing the holes in our own knowledge, giving us this totally false sense of confidence.
This whole idea leads us to two classic syndromes that I bet you'll recognize. On one side, you've got the armchair quarterback, the person whose confidence is way, way bigger than their actual skill. And on the other side, you have the imposter, whose skill and competence are way bigger than their confidence. One is blind to their weaknesses, the other is blind to their strengths.
For a real-world example of an armchair quarterback, we don't have to look any further than David Odson. After his policies helped lead to Iceland's massive financial collapse, Time magazine actually named him one of the 25 people to blame for the entire global crisis. So what was his response? He ran for president, saying he had considerable experience. You can't make this stuff up.
And then you have our imposter, Halla Tómasdóttir. She's this super successful entrepreneur who guided her company right through that very same crisis. But when a petition with thousands of signatures urged her to run for president, her very first thought was just crippling self-doubt. Who am I to be president?
All right, so let's dig into the psychology of that armchair quarterback first. And to do that, we have to take a little trip to a place that some psychologists have a great name for, Mount Stupid.
This whole idea is explained by the famous Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's actually pretty simple when you break it down. The skills you need to be good at something are often the exact same skills you need to recognize how good you are. So if you're not very competent, you also don't have the tools to see your own incompetence. You just don't know what you don't know.
And this isn't just some funny little quirk that happens every now and then. Oh no, we're talking about data from thousands of companies that shows this stunning pattern. Managers across all different cultures consistently think they're better than they are. And get this, the worse a company is actually managed, the more its managers overestimate their skills.
You know what? Let's see how this feels in practice. I've got a quick question for you. Just think about it for a sec. Why were women burned at the stake in Salem? An answer might pop right into your head.
Okay, here's another one for you. On which spaceflight did humans first see the Great Wall of China? Again, you might have an image or a specific mission coming to mind.
So, if you had a confident answer ready for either of those questions, you may have just felt this effect yourself, because both questions were trick questions. They have false premises. Suspected witches in Salem were hanged, not burned at the stake, and you can't actually see the Great Wall from space with a naked eye. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect right there. A little bit of information can create a whole lot of false confidence.
And that was exactly David Odson's problem. See, he had experience in politics, sure, but he had zero training in economics. And that little bit of knowledge was just dangerous enough to make him think he could run a central bank. It led him right to the top of Mount Stupid, totally unable to see the cliff he was about to lead his country over.
So that's the trap of overconfidence. But what about the other side of the coin? The imposter. Could there possibly be any benefit to feeling all that self-doubt?
You know, surprisingly, the answer is yes. Research is starting to show that feeling like an imposter, even though it can be uncomfortable, actually has three really powerful benefits. It can push us to work harder, it can motivate us to work smarter by questioning everything, and maybe most importantly, it makes us better learners because we're humble enough to admit we don't have all the answers.
And this is exactly what happened with Halla Tómasdóttir. She didn't let that self-doubt stop her. No, she used it. She turned what felt like a huge roadblock into pure rocket fuel for her presidential campaign.
So, this brings us to the million-dollar question, right? If being an armchair quarterback is a trap and being an imposter is a heavy burden, where's the sweet spot? How do we get off this crazy confidence seesaw?
Well, the answer isn't just to find some bland middle ground between being arrogant and being shy. It's about finding a completely different state of mind, one that Adam Grant calls confident humility. And here's why confident humility is such a game changer. It separates your belief in your ability to figure things out from your belief in your current plan. It means you can be totally confident that you'll reach your goal while also being humble enough to admit that maybe, just maybe, your current strategy isn't the best one.
Halla is the perfect example of this. She was confident she could learn how to be a great president, but she was humble enough to doubt that she already knew how to run a winning campaign. And that doubt is what pushed her to innovate, doing things like Facebook Live sessions, using Snapchat, and running this incredibly positive campaign when all her opponents were busy slinging mud. And the effect of her approach was just staggering. I mean, look at this. A little over a month before the election, she was polling at just 1%. 1%. She barely even made it into the debates. But because she kept rethinking and learning, she connected with voters and became a real, serious contender. And the election results? Well, they really tell the whole story, don't they? Halla, the candidate with confident humility, finished in a stunning second place with 28% of the vote. David Odson, our armchair quarterback, ended up way behind in fourth place with less than 14%. The person who embraced doubt absolutely crushed the one who was blind to his own weaknesses.
So what's the big takeaway here? The greatest thinkers, the most successful people, they aren't confident because they know everything. They're confident in their ability to learn anything. Arrogance just blinds us to our weaknesses. Humility is what helps us see them clearly. So the real question for all of us is, where are your blind spots, and are you willing to think again?